Hello there. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I have something truly spine-chilling for you. I'm going to narrate a couple of ice cream truck horror stories that will make you think twice before chasing that jingle. First, we'll delve into the tale of Jackson Thorne, a fearless journalist who stumbles upon a terrifying mystery in his hometown. What starts with a missing child and an eerie ice cream truck jingle leads him to a nightmarish discovery that will haunt you. Next, we'll step into the summer of 2009 with Finn Daniels and his friends. Their innocent excitement for ice cream turns into a harrowing ordeal as they encounter the sinister Mr. Frosty. Trapped and desperate, their courage and quick thinking are the only things that might save them. So, sit back, maybe grab a warm blanket, and get ready for some bone-chilling tales. Let's dive into these ice cream truck horror stories.
Story 1. The Haunting Melody.
Jackson Thorne was no ordinary journalist. He had delved into the murky waters of political corruption and corporate scandals, unraveling secrets that made the headlines. But nothing prepared Jackson for the chilling mystery that awaited him in his own hometown, a small lakeside village called Lakewood. Jackson's curiosity was piqued when a tearful mother, Mrs. Thompson, burst into his office. Her child, Ben, had vanished without a trace. Between her sobs and fragmented stories, one detail stood out: the haunting melody of an ice cream truck that Ben had followed moments before disappearing. Jackson couldn't shake off the disturbing story. That night, he decided to track the ice cream truck himself. Lakewood's tree-lined streets seemed peaceful, but Jackson sensed a sinister secret lurking in the shadows. As twilight deepened into night, he parked his rented minivan in a quiet corner and waited. The silence was thick, but then, faint strains of a familiar jingle broke through. Jackson's heart pounded. That's got to be it, he thought. Time to see where this leads. He tailed the truck discreetly, noting its path and the stops it made in deserted areas of the neighborhood. The driver was a middle-aged man with a cap pulled low over his face and a nondescript uniform. Over 5 nights, Jackson observed erratic patterns: sudden accelerations, abrupt stops, and an unusual detour to the outskirts of town. On the 6th night, Jackson decided to confront the driver. Armed with his recorder and a can of pepper spray, he approached the truck as it parked near an old, abandoned warehouse. "Excuse me, sir. I'm a journalist. Mind if I ask a few questions?" The driver's reaction was instant and terrifying. His face twisted in anger, and his eyes were a chilling, empty stare fixed on Jackson. "Get the hell out of my sight, or so help me God." Jackson's heart raced. "Is this your ice cream truck? Do you know a boy named Ben? He went missing last week." The driver stopped in his tracks. He knew. Worse yet, he knew that Jackson knew. Before Jackson could react, the driver lunged at him. Jackson managed to dodge and ran toward the warehouse. The door slammed shut behind him as he entered, the echo of the driver's enraged shouts following him into the darkness. Inside, the air was bitingly cold, and the faint smell of chemicals mingled with vanilla was nauseating. As Jackson's eyes adjusted, he saw ice sculptures. No, not sculptures. Frozen children posed as if in play, their faces forever locked in silent screams. Jackson's stomach churned. "Oh my God, what have you done?" He stumbled backward, dropping his recorder, overwhelmed by the primal urge to escape. But the driver was there at the door, blocking his only exit. "You wanted a story, didn't you? Here it is. I'm preserving the future. A new ice age is coming, and they will survive it thanks to me." The driver's ramblings were the raving of a madman. He approached, a sick grin spreading across his face as he pulled a large ice-coated chain from behind him. "You can join them. Be part of the story forever." Fear surged through Jackson. He pulled out his pepper spray and sprayed the driver, hitting him full in the face. The driver howled in rage and pain, stumbling back, giving Jackson just enough time to run. Jackson's heart pounded as he dashed through the warehouse, searching desperately for another way out. His lungs burned as he raced through the labyrinthine corridors, the icy ground beneath his feet threatening to betray his escape. The driver's enraged howls grew distant, but the echo made it impossible to pinpoint his location. Jackson knew every second counted. His mind raced, desperate for a solution, when his foot kicked against something hard, a flashlight. He flicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness, revealing a rear exit obscured by heavy curtains. Hope surged in Jackson's heart. He reached for the curtain just as a loud crash echoed through the warehouse. The driver was close, too close. Jackson yanked the curtain aside and pushed open the heavy door, the night air hitting him like a wave. Outside, the terrain was uneven, littered with debris and overgrown with weeds. Jackson stumbled across the uneven ground, his breath loud in the silent night. Then, just as Jackson thought he might make it, a hand clamped down on his shoulder, spinning him around. The driver stood there, his face distorted by fury and red welts from the pepper spray. He swung the heavy chain, which Jackson barely dodged. "Stay back. Help. Help me," Jackson screamed, hoping someone might hear him in this abandoned part of town. The driver lunged again, the chain whistling through the air. Jackson ducked, feeling it graze the top of his head. In that moment, Jackson saw his chance. He kicked with all his might, aiming for the driver's groin. There was a sickening pop, and the driver howled, collapsing to the ground. Pain shot through Jackson's foot, but adrenaline pushed him forward. He ran, each step agony, his lungs screaming, but fear lent him speed. Lights in the distance grew brighter, and Jackson heard voices. Real, living voices. It was a patrol, a random check by local police. "Sir, are you okay? What happened?" Jackson collapsed in front of them, words tumbling out between gasps. "The ice cream truck driver. He's back there. He's taken children, frozen them. Please, you have to stop him." The officers sprang into action, radios crackling to life as Jackson sat on the cold ground, the reality of his escape washing over him in waves of relief and horror. The next hours were a blur of lights, questions, and sirens as backup arrived. They found Ben, barely alive, and 6 other kids frozen forever. The driver was apprehended, his reign of terror ended. Reflecting on that night, Jackson realized how close he came to becoming another frozen figure in the grotesque gallery. It was supposed to be just another story, but it became a testament to the darkest corners of human nature and the incredible will to survive. This story changed Jackson. No one walks away from such a brush with death unchanged. He continued to write, expose, and unveil, now with a profound awareness of the darkness lurking behind the most mundane faces.
Story 2. The Night of the Frozen Horror.
When Finn Daniels and his friends heard the jingle of the ice cream truck, they never imagined the nightmare that awaited them. It was the summer of 2009, a time when ice cream trucks meant joy and sweet treats. But this summer, Mr. Frosty turned that joy into terror. Finn, a curious and adventurous boy, loved spending his days with his best friends, Jack, Sam, and Tommy. The boys were inseparable and always up for an adventure. One hot afternoon, they were playing soccer in the park when the familiar jingle of the ice cream truck echoed through the neighborhood. "Hey, Mr. Frosty, for chocolate cones, please," Finn called out, running towards the truck with his friends. Mr. Frosty, a tall man with a wide smile but hollow eyes, greeted them. "Oh, you boys are naughty, aren't you? I don't see your parents around. You aren't playing alone, right? It's a bad world out there, kids. Bad people roam around." Finn shook his head. "No, no parents. Only friends. Now, can we have our 4 chocolate cones, please, Mr. Frosty?" Mr. Frosty's grin widened. "Of course. How about I give you 8 cones if you promise not to tell your parents? It'll be our little secret." The boys' eyes lit up with excitement. Double the ice cream? It sounded too good to be true. Mr. Frosty didn't hand out the cones right away. Instead, he invited them to the back of the truck. The boys followed eagerly, unaware they were stepping into a trap. The door slammed shut behind them, and the boys found themselves in darkness. The air was cold, and a rotten smell lingered beneath the sweet aroma of vanilla and strawberries. The cheerful jingle was replaced by an eerie silence. Finn's heart pounded in his chest as fear began to creep in. "Welcome to my real ice cream parlor, boys. Here, you'll become part of my special collection. Mr. Frosty said, his laughter sending chills down their spines. The boys exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't what they had expected. Mr. Frosty revealed his twisted games, each designed to test how long they could withstand the freezing temperatures of the truck's freezer. His favorite game was freeze tag, where being it meant being locked inside the freezer for 10 minutes that felt like an eternity. Let's see who can be as cold as ice. The winner gets a special treat from Mr. Frosty, he said, shoving Finn inside the freezer first. Finn screamed and cried, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. The cold bit into his skin, and his face grew numb. When he was finally let out, he was shivering uncontrollably. One by one, the other boys faced the same ordeal. Mr. Frosty's games only grew crueler with each round. The boys huddled together for warmth, their breaths turning to vapor in the frigid air. Their spirits were breaking bit by bit, but it was Mr. Frosty's sudden fits of rage that truly terrified them. If they cried or begged, he would bang on the freezer with his fists, screaming about silence and the purity of cold quiet. The ice spirits don't like noise. You'll upset them, he would shout, his eyes wild with madness. The ordeal seemed endless. Desperation and fear clawed at Finn's mind. But even in the darkest moments, a flicker of hope ignited within him. He remembered the music system that played the jingle. It was their only link to the outside world, their only chance at salvation. We need to reach the music system. If we can change the tune, maybe someone will notice something's wrong, Finn whispered to his friends when Mr. Frosty left to handle a customer. The plan was risky, but they had no choice. They crawled towards the front of the truck, their eyes fixed on the music system above the driver's seat. On 3, I'll boost you up, Jack. Just hit the buttons, any of them. Change the tune, change the pattern, anything, Finn said. He boosted Jack up, who reached for the controls with trembling fingers. The jingle warped, a discordant melody filling the air. Then, the channel changed to heavy metal music blasting from the speakers. It was a sound no one could ignore. Mr. Frosty's shadow loomed at the truck's window, his face twisted in rage. The door flung open, and he lunged at the boys, his scream piercing the night. The terror of that moment was paralyzing. In his frenzy to fix the music, Mr. Frosty left his ice pick on the driver's seat. Finn saw his chance. As Mr. Frosty's back was turned, Finn grabbed the ice pick. With all the strength he could muster, Finn lunged forward and stabbed Mr. Frosty repeatedly. Mr. Frosty staggered back, shock and pain filling his eyes. You betrayed the ice spirits. His fall gave the boys the seconds they needed. They spilled out into the night, their screams mingling with the chaotic jingle of the truck. The neighborhood, roused by the noise, became their rescuers. Lights flickered on, doors opened, and the reality of their situation dawned on the community. The police arrived swiftly, their sirens a symphony of salvation. They took a bleeding Mr. Frosty away. His eyes met Finn's, a chilling mixture of confusion and accusation. But in that moment, Finn felt no triumph, only the weight of their narrow escape. It took years of healing to recover from the horror of that night. Looking back, those harrowing hours in Mr. Frosty's clutches taught Finn and his friends about the depths of human resilience, the strength that emerges from the coldest darkness. They were more than survivors. They were warriors of their own fates, bound by terror but freed by their will to live. 15 years passed, but the lessons remained. Finn often thought about that summer, the haunting melody, and the power of hope that no darkness could ever silence.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to listen to similar stories in future.